Immortals Fenyx Rising is a third-person open-world action RPG set in the amazing setting of Greek mythology. Developed by Ubisoft Quebec and is available on Xbox Series X and S, PlayStation 5, Xbox One, PlayStation 4, Nintendo Switch, Epic Games Store, Ubisoft Connect and on Stadia. The world is very stylized and almost cartoonish, but before we start I'd like to say that this doesn't take anything away from the gameplay. I'm making this video using a base level PS4, so the gameplay footage is taken directly from there during my own experience with the game. I've been playing the game after the day one patch and the follow-up bug corrections, and in case you're wondering, I feel the game runs really smoothly on a base PS4, so you shouldn't expect any massive or major flaws based on your platform. My PS4 is as old as they come, so if it runs well on there, I doubt you'll have any major issues on other platforms. That is not to say there are no bugs whatsoever, just a note of reassurance to players using older hardware. During this review I'll cover the story setting and the tone of the game without giving any major spoilers away. I'll talk about the gameplay, the combat, the character customization and progression, and the gameplay loop. I will also discuss a few small criticisms and some suggestions to make your experience more enjoyable. I will also suggest reasons you may love this game and draw some comparisons to other games to help illustrate my point. If you enjoy the video or find it useful guys, please take a moment to leave a like and comment, as it really helps to keep the channel growing and moving forward. Okay, here we go. In Immortals Fenyx Rising, you play as Phoenix, an unlikely hero with limited experience in the field of battle. As the story begins, you create your own version of Phoenix. The character customization is fairly simple, nothing too in-depth, but it will provide you a base level way to customize your playthrough. You can play as a boy or a girl, and the story cutscenes are tailored to be inclusive regardless of your choice here. You have the ability to pick your difficulty level, which will allow you to simply enjoy the story, or crank it up to make the combat and gameplay as tough as possible. The gist of the story is that Phoenix is a mortal who stumbles into an ongoing crisis in the world of the ancient Greek gods, and sets off on a quest to save their brother, who's been turned to stone. The backdrop to all of this is that the evil Typhon has escaped from Tartarus and taken the entire pantheon as his hostage, and is in the process of wreaking havoc across the land. You get the idea. The tone of the story is actually really good. The story itself is narrated and told from the perspective of Prometheus, who is speaking to Zeus, who comes off as a bored and petulant child at points, which I found pretty funny.
You chained me to this rock and fed my liver to an eagle out of love.
There are clever references to many stories from Greek mythology, and it's delivered in a very light-hearted and comical way, which makes it very accessible. Initially, when I read about the comedic storytelling, this put me off. I usually prefer more dark and gothic type games, and I automatically assumed that the comedy and cartoony feel would cheapen the gameplay in a sense, but it really didn't. What it did do was to make this game viable for a younger audience, but still leave enough in there for us adults. It reminded me of Pixar films in that way, enough jokes in there for the kids, but also enough humour for older players, which will sail straight over a younger child's head. The game is light-hearted but still has enough from a gameplay perspective to get your teeth into. If you want to play it on the story setting, you're looking at around 30 hours of gameplay if you rush through. For the rest of us, it's more likely to give you around 50 hours or so, or more if you want to complete everything. So the gameplay itself starts out fairly simple. You find Achilles' sword very early on and you have to fight off some basic soldiers. Your sword acts as your light attack. Very soon after you will find an axe which becomes your heavy attack. After that you will begin to unlock things like a bow, and your wings, which will initially allow you to double jump, and then shortly after you'll be given the ability to glide. You can attack from stealth, you can focus on ranged combat, or you can get in your enemy's face with a sword, or axe, or both. Fenyx Rising does a really good job of introducing you to all of the abilities and game mechanics without dragging you through long tutorials. You'll begin to find godly powers, which will give you new combat abilities to weave into your combinations. One example is you will find some braces early on, which will allow you to pick up and carry items much heavier than you would normally be able to. This is used for the out of combat puzzles to solve, but can also be weaved into your combat strategy for launching rocks at your enemies. One thing the game does well is to signpost things for you, but does not necessarily force you into the story missions immediately. You will however find limitations initially as you play. If you go wandering off on your own path, you will have the freedom to do this, but you may begin to encounter puzzles that you don't have the tools to solve, or an enemy who you could beat in theory if you manage to fight flawlessly, but realistically for most players will be too tough until you've upgraded and made some progress. The game is beautiful and the map is huge and covered with things to do, but you won't be able to just set off for any place you choose straight away. There are areas with elite enemies or mountains to climb that you simply won't be able to until you've upgraded your stamina or have enough stamina buffs on hand. The stamina issue frustrated me a little to begin with, preventing me from climbing certain areas or swimming far enough before running out and being unable to go further. But I soon realised two things. One, that this has been done deliberately and is not a flaw in the game. It's there as a level check to ensure you're not just waltzing off into an area you have no business in just yet. And two, the means to upgrade your stamina and health and other stats doesn't take as long as you might think. So the initial annoyance of being limited in my gameplay was pretty quickly removed as I made further progress. Pretty early into the story missions you will be introduced to an area called the Hall of the Gods, which is a place that allows you to upgrade your stamina, your health, your weapons and armour. You can pick up and upgrade new abilities here too, as well as being able to create potions. The potions can also be upgraded to give you additional bonuses to things like damage, stun or defense. It sounds like a lot to manage, but it's actually relatively simple. Now this may put certain players off. The RPG elements of the game are almost like an RPG light, so for example, when you choose to upgrade a weapon, you don't pick a single sword to upgrade, the upgrade counts towards all swords that you use. The same goes for your armour pieces and other weapons. On one hand, this might be good for those of you who want a slightly simpler gameplay experience and the ability to swap out the weapons and armour you find to fit the current challenge you're facing. Being able to upgrade everything in one category at once makes it really simple to pick and choose your current loadout for a particular situation, allowing you to take advantage of certain weapon perks for one fight and then swapping over to a different one to meet a different encounter. But for other players, those of you who like the nitty-gritty and really want to dig into the detail and focus on a particular set of gear, you may feel like the ability to upgrade everything in one category at once is simplifying things a little too much. Personally, I enjoyed the freedom it gave me. It allowed me to swap out my gear when I found new pieces without needing to worry about going back to upgrade it or having it too under level to use straight away. You'll find all the tools you need to upgrade your weapons, armour, potions, abilities, health and stamina out in the world, and you can identify new things to discover around the map by using the Farsight ability, which makes it nice and easy to uncover things to do without needing to simply stumble into them. In terms of the combat, I actually really enjoyed it. At first it begins very simply as a hack and slash, but very soon you'll be facing off against enemies which will challenge you. You have the ability to dodge and to parry. The parry window is pretty generous, and the dodge ability, if used at the perfect time, will slow time for a couple of seconds, which makes you feel rewarded for playing well and also gives you a nice damage window against tougher enemies. As you progress, you will have the ability to string these together. A perfect dodge allowing you to get some hits in, followed by a perfect parry when time goes back to normal speed and the enemy tries to complete their attack sequence. If you get enough hits in or parry well, then your enemy will become stunned, and then you can unload on them for a little while. You will also be able to use some of your godly powers to get some damage in or interrupt certain attacks. Now this is where the game could be seen as flawed. I started out playing on normal difficulty, but after a while and after unlocking certain abilities and upgrading my weapons and armour, I began to find that the challenge of the game didn't always scale with me. This is great if you want the power fantasy, but personally I enjoy the challenge. What I would recommend for you is to take advantage of some of the options available to you. You can increase the difficulty of course, but you can also remove elements of the HUD. This will increase the challenge if you eventually begin to find things a little too easygoing. In terms of the puzzles, these are actually really good. Some of them are tricky to solve and may cause you to scratch your head from time to time. There is a way to make it easier if you want the puzzle assistance on, but I wouldn't say that any of them are absolute brick wall without it. The puzzles include trips to Tartarus, which can be a large variety of challenges. First of all, you'll need to clear the entrance for each one, and then when you get there, the areas include jumping puzzles, traps to avoid, or even combat challenges. Each one of your trips to Tartarus will reward you with some of Zeus's lightning, which can be used to help you increase your stamina. For those of you who like to get your luck just right, there is a built-in transmog system so you can make any of your armour sets or weapons look like anything else you've already picked up. This is a nice touch. Inevitably there is also a cash shop, which personally I'm not a fan of in full price games, but I can understand the commercial sense behind it. From what I've seen though, the cash shop in Fenys Rising is cosmetic only, and you won't find yourself struggling to enjoy the game if you decide not to spend any money after the initial purchase. It's not a pay to win system. In other reviews I've seen, the game was compared to a cross between Assassin's Creed and Zelda Breath of the Wild. I don't disagree with that view, but from my own point of view I think there are a lot of likenesses here with Genshin Impact, but without the gacha game elements. It has a very similar stamina system, and the climbing and flying felt very much alike. If you like the thought of Genshin Impact but the gacha side of things put you off, you might find a lot to love in Fenys Rising. If you enjoy open world RPG games and you're not too worried about a slightly simplified RPG system, or if you enjoy third person combat games with a power fantasy attached to them and you won't let the comedic story setting put you off the fact that some of the boss encounters will definitely test you, then I think you'll really enjoy this game. This could also be a really good entry game for younger players. It has a PEGI rating of 12+, which means that kids who are 12 and above could easily use this as a primer to get into other third person RPG games. There are also 3 DLCs to look forward to in the future, so if you enjoy a game with longer term playability, then this could be a game for you. One small criticism is that very occasionally I found the hitboxes on certain boss fights to be a little off, meaning I would get hit when, in my mind at least, I'd clearly dodged something. But that could simply be a mechanic of those particular fights and didn't stop me from enjoying the overall game experience. I didn't particularly encounter any bugs, although I have seen reports of people occasionally getting stuck in walls and having to fast travel away. I'd guess that these issues have been patched out though, given my own experience. I found the game to be highly polished and very enjoyable, with interesting boss fights, loads to explore and some interesting puzzles to solve, all capped off by an interesting story in one of my favourite settings, Greek mythology. I hope you enjoyed the video. Leave me a like and comment if you don't mind, sub if you're new, and I'll wrap it up here. Thank you for watching, take care, stay safe, bye bye now.